All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Beyond Baroque Literary Arts Center. My name is Quentin Ring. I am Beyond Baroque's executive director, and we are here to celebrate two new books from some truly talented poets. We have with us Kazim Ali, who is celebrating Sukun, new and selected poems, and we also have with us Erica Lewis, who's launching Mahogany. We've also have with us for reading, we have Blas Falconer and Vandana Khanna. Very excited to have both of them as well. I think we're all in for a treat tonight. Before we get started, though, I did just want to begin by recognizing our presence here on Tongva land. We acknowledge the wrong done to indigenous peoples through settler colonialism, genocidal practices, and the violent dispossession of their land. As an arts organization, Beyond Baroque is committed to uplifting indigenous writers, communities, poets, and their art. Beyond Baroque is Los Angeles' oldest literary institution. We actually turned 55 years old this year. Thank you. If you want to applaud some more, we are having a gala coming up on October 21st in 2 weeks. And for this gala for 55, we are really trying to honor the generations of poets, writers, artists, supporters who have helped build Beyond Baroque over the years. We will be honoring, just in 2 weeks, we'll be honoring Jim Crusoe, our founding artistic director, Ed Ruchet, who's one of our major supporters, Amanda Gorman, who's another one of our major supporters, as well as Bob Brannaman, our former artist in residence here. Two exceptional poets who've been very involved here over the years, Amy Gersler and Lynn Thompson. And finally, two activists who really sort of built the poetry community well beyond Baroque as well, Xochitl Julissa Bermejo and Hiram Sims. So it's kind of an expanded group that we're honoring this year, but we're very excited about it. Please do look into buying tickets. You can do that online. There'll be cocktails, dinner, entertainment, art auction, the whole shebang. So it should be fun. We are doing a lot of thinking about our history right now in a few ways. So I have a few exciting announcements. We will be holding the annual Southern California Poetry Festival on November 17th to 19th. Kazim was part of it last year. It was a lot of fun. But this year, on the launch of the festival, we will be renaming this theater after one of the figures who read here, was a constant presence over the years, Wanda Coleman. So very excited about that. Terrence Hayes will be here to read, as well as a number of others as part of that. The whole weekend will be great. Juan Felipe Herrera will be here the next day. You have a whole slew of folks. So please do come back for that. The other thing we're thinking a lot about is the ways Venice has changed over the years. So we have an exhibit opening tomorrow, which you can see. It's almost ready outside. It is called Where Has All the Affordable Housing Gone? Venice, in our time here when we were founded, was a low-rent neighborhood, pretty diverse, home to a lot of artists, different communities, has been massively gentrified. And a lot of that has been done through illegal means, particularly under the Ellis Act. And this exhibit documents the loss of units in this neighborhood over a very long time, which is directly contributing not only to gentrification, but to the homelessness crisis that we see in Southern California around us. And so please do come back for that, or just check out the exhibit when you get a chance. It's a very important project. I don't want to say too much more other than say if you can't come to the gala, you can certainly support us by becoming a member tonight. It costs as little as $60 individual membership. We have levels above that. It helps us keep these events free, helps us pay writers, and helps us sort of do everything that we do. And of course, also do buy the poets' books. We have them for sale in the bookstore. I'm sure they'll be happy to sign them after the program. They're great books, and so I think you'll really enjoy them. So beyond that, I just want to sort of get to the readings, and we're going to start off with Blas Falconer, who is the author of 4 poetry collections, including Rara Avis, and a co-editor of 2 essay collections, the other Latin, is it Latin?
I don't know.
It's got the sort of it's got the you know,
Latino,
at
Latina,
yeah.
whatever we're using now.
The other Latinx, writing against a singular identity, and Mentor and Muse, essays from poets to poets. His poems have been featured by Poetry, Harvard Review, and the New York Times. And his awards include fellowships from the National Endowments for the Arts, the Tennessee Arts Commission, and Poets and Writers. He is the editor-in-chief for Poetry international online and teaches in the MFA program at San Diego State University. It's great to have Blas back, so please welcome Blas Falconer, everyone.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here and to celebrate these new books of poems that are we can buy tonight and read. It's true that with that anthology, it's weird because when it was the other Latino, but we didn't want to say O, so we had the A with the circle around it. But that was before Latinx came out, and now no one ever knows how to use that, say that title. But it was the best we could do. What a pleasure it is to be here. I'm going to be reading for 13 minutes. And, yeah, only 13. I'm in a weird situation because my last book came out in 2018. My next book, Rara Avis, won't be coming out until next year. And so I'm in this weird limbo. So I thought I would just give you a teaser of the next book, Rara Avis, by reading 2 sequences that I think are kind of like sister poems, and then read a little bit of new work. The first, what makes these 2 poems similar is that they both begin with personal narratives and end with an ekphrasis section, so a poem responding to visual art. Forgiven. When the shoulders of the man sitting in front of me are the width of your shoulders, the slouch, your slouch, I think this time to lean into the sting of your leaving, the way you, long dead now, once leaned over a sink, the smell of shaving cream, your own face in the mirror, a speck of blood spreading in white foam. We sat there for nearly an hour, me and not you, and the poet on stage who said, a snow globe shaken relives the same shatter. Years later, I can not want you and not want you to have left. I held your waist and we rocked slowly under our studio's one window, which glowed with the morning paper you taped there so neighbors couldn't see. News of storms hitting the coast that summer, news of war. One night you stormed off at dinner, shaking your head, your fists. You had your own ghosts. You who'd held a spoon of ice cream, cold and sweet to my mouth, singing, open up, softly. After Rembrandt's The Prodigal Son. Forgiveness was the moral of the story, and the master's depiction, which has been said to bring those who come upon it to tears. One man kneeling, his shorn head pressed into the other's robes. In the painting, the young man's clothes are tattered, his shoes has fallen off, his bare foot exposed. The light spills on both men from an open door somewhere beyond our view, and through which the one who has only now, after so many years, come through. This one's a bit different thematically. And it's a funny poem because I had this memory as a child, and I wanted to write about it. And I did, and I sat on it for a couple of years, and then I wrote a second section, and it felt like the right pairing, and then I didn't know how to conclude it. And then I thought about this one statue that I would go back to again and again, and it felt like the way to resolve the problem that I had introduced in the first 2 sections. The title of the poem is Figura Serpentinata. She began screaming at the man standing behind us in line. The cashier looked out from behind a glass partition. The man stepped back, laughing, shaking his head. "Stop," I said to my mother. "Please." I was still a child. She was still screaming. "He can't touch me like that." The men looked to each other and looked away. Then she stopped, electrified with rage, took my hand, and we stood in silence, waiting to pay. My father and I sat at the kitchen table when we heard, faintly, someone screaming. "Your sister," he said, alarmed, already leaping up the stairs. And for a moment, I too imagined someone standing over her in the dark. "Dad," I called, and he stopped on the landing outside her door. "It's just a song on the radio," so low that we couldn't discern the words. "A song," I repeated, "that's all." We walked back down the steps, breathless, shaking our heads. In Jean Bologna's Abduction, the figures move upward in a twisting pattern known as figura serpentinata. One man straddles another as he carries the woman away. Where he grabs her left hip, fingers press into her flesh. The woman, arms outstretched, turns back as she is hoisted in the air. You must engage the sculpture in 360 degrees to see the drama unfold. When the work was unveiled to the public in August of 1582, not one person could find fault with it. So, those are from the new book. That's my little taste. Thank you. So I just want to have fun and read some new poems that have not been read before. This next collection is still, about only a third written. And one of the common themes is Puerto Rico. My mother's from Puerto Rico. It's a very important place to me. I've written about it for years, but I'm doing it in a much more kind of thoughtful, conscious way. Last May, my mother and I went back. We go quite often, but we went back and we drove through the middle of the island, through the mountain range. It's called La Cordillera Central, and it's quite beautiful, and it can take days to drive through, and you just stop in little towns and you eat and you meet people and kind of explore the little plaza and whatever the town has to offer, and then go along. And we did this for several days, meeting a bunch of people, and my mother just shared all kinds of stories about herself and her mother and her mother's mother and so on. La Cordillera Central, for my mother and her mother and her mother and hers. There was a sadness in your question. How much time do we have left? And a sweetness, everything we had lost and would lose still. We turned the car around, your finger tracing the map, the road through the heart of the island. Isabela, San Sebastián, Cayey, and the stony hilltops like knuckles. I tried to hold on to it in my mind. The rain began again, and the valley darkened. A lifetime in each green sprout. A lifetime of lifetimes there in one field. Another thing that I keep finding myself doing with this new project is writing these poems called Ars Poetica, in which I'm trying to capture what it's like to be a writer. I think it feels very different now in my 50s than it did in my 20s, as I think about my students and what draws them to the page, and I think about how after 30 years I keep coming back. And what I'm noticing is that the poems often capture a moment that is both painful and soulful. And so I continue to explore these. There are about 3 or 4 of them so far, but this is one of them. Ars Poetica. I push one red bead after another across the thin wire. I know how to count to 100, but my mouth opens to a blank page. Forgetting a word is the moment you start to fall in a dream. I pick acorns off the ground, little caps on my fingertips. The boy I love holds my face in wet leaves, his body pressed down on my body, and twists my arm behind my back so hard he must mean to break it. He presses down until we hear something break. I'm going to read what I think are 2 more poems. Yeah. So there are a number of poems that address the history of Puerto Rico. So there's visual arts, music, all kinds of things. But one of the recurring themes is history. And I have a poem that looks at the first settlement in Caparra. And this poem is a little bit of a companion poem to that one. And it's called Gold. And it's in 2 sections. The first section is in the voice of the Spaniards seeking gold, and the second section is in the voice of gold itself. Gold. We came looking for it, a little farther, a little longer, one brick, then another, a house, a chapel. We will live here, we will pray here. And if some finds its way into our pockets, who can blame us? The small stone biting your hip all day, tracing the impression with your finger at night. Mosquitoes rising up in a cloud, a streak of blood smeared across your hand. The fevers, the heavy sleep, the raids, the fires, everyone looking away. Which way, dear God, which way now? Find me, it says, sinking deeper into the ground. I am not here, it says, waiting for you. I call, a wink in the quartz, dust flashing along the river bottom. You can pan the current, dig a road into the ground, crawl down on your belly, pray. The yellow canary blooms above each 5-petaled trumpet, a horn of light. How you miss me, a foot to the left, an inch to the right. What would you not do to find even one small seed? Your wanting is all I ever wanted. And I will end with this brief love poem. It is a love poem from one 50-year-old to 50-something-year-old to another 50-something-year-old. And it is called The Middle Ages. And it has an epigraph. And the epigraph is "Saben más que las arañas," which is a Puerto Rican expression meaning they know more than the spiders. The Middle Ages. What do spiders know that we don't after 20 years? The hair on the back of your neck bristles beneath my fingertips. No one cares. Last spring, you knelt in the grass to plant flowers along the curb. Tonight, it's littered with trash. I want you to kiss me like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Blas. That was wonderful. Next up, we have Vandana Khanna, who is the author of 2 full-length collections, Train to Agra and Afternoon Masala. Her poems have won the Crab Orchard Review First Book Prize, the Miller Williams Poetry Prize, and the, am I saying this right, Diode Editions Chapbook Competition. Apparently this is my time for screwing up intros, but her work has appeared in publications such as the Academy of American Poets Poem a Day, New England Review, the New Republic, and Guernica. She is a poetry editor at the Los Angeles Review. Please, everyone, welcome Vandana Khanna.
Thanks so much. I'm thrilled to be here tonight to launch these great books into the world. My latest collection just came out in April. It's called Burning Like Her Own Planet, and I'm going to be reading some poems from there. And this is really just a book about goddesses, Hindu goddesses. And I came up with the idea after reading, picture books to my kids. I thought it would be a great way to kind of introduce them to my culture. But as I was reading them, I kind of noticed that it all focused in on the gods, and the goddesses just ended up being like plot devices over to the side. So I kind of wanted to think about how they would rewrite myth, how they would kind of view these iconic stories through their own experiences. And the other thing that I'm kind of really interested in this collection is this idea of reincarnation, which is a huge tenet in Hinduism, but also just the idea of like romantic love connected to reincarnation. So like what happens when you find your soulmate, but you're constantly being reincarnated? Where does that love go, right? Like where does that love go? What happens to that kind of romantic love? So that's kind of the overall theme of the book. So I'm going to start off by reading kind of a Cliff Notes version of the book, and it's called Hindu Mythology in Shorthand. Begin with the blue god, with the charm, the flute, and the cows. Then the holy monkey who thrashes through the jungle, crushing everything lush and green underfoot. I'm 7 and can't sleep because it's not Virginia, it's not snowing. The stories in Sanskrit, in Hindi, jumbled and cloudy in my ears. My grandmother wants me to forget it's Christmas in India, tells of Durga riding a tiger, arms filled with sickles and swords, vindication manifest in steel's sharp edges. Of stolen Sita, selfless and pure, the sag of her mud-streaked sari, I imagined the color of unused sky, green of Himalayan summers, but it was probably red, like every other one I'd seen since I'd gotten off the airplane, shades of crimson, shades of bleeding. There was that smell, Delhi, that I couldn't sniff out of my nose, incense and sandalwood, husked corn and lemons, the tar of oily streets and burning tires following me through roadside stalls and halal markets, down rows of henna and biscuits caught in the crease of my neck in the bucket of bathwater, on the cotton pillow sewn with tiny mirrors reflecting back bits of myself. Then the holy charioteers pinned the sky with arrows of fire, and we sang Om and Ram Ram, me trying to make it sound like it was born in my mouth. my third eye awake behind the skull's delicate cradle, blinking. So part of what I was also interested in this book is a cycle of creation and destruction. So each section kind of begins with a creation myth and then kind of ends in a destruction myth. So this is one of the first creation myths. This is how the whole holy mess went down. Cue the girl in tone-deaf gold, drama thick in her blood, a kind of love always caught in the underworld or the other world, all vendetta and Vedas. She woke from dreams silted with arrows, broken teeth, the man smells still sharp and human on her, the birds nearsighted with melancholy. Her heart wintering over some god she'll probably never see again. He tells her to play dead, that no one will notice, just another girl from some hill town with her lotus petal eyes walking into a forest on fire. So there are a couple of goddesses I'm kind of thinking about their stories in this book. One is Sita, who is sort of this iconic goddess, kind of represents fidelity, the loyal wife. And then the other one is Parvati. But there are also these kind of more generic goddesses that show up. And this one is the mother goddess advises. Watch out for the one with the pink cheeks, with wrists that can twist to music. She wants you for the wrong reason, the way the blue of your skin reminds her of the sky after a monsoon. Resist her tender shoulder, the smooth slope of back. Resist her slim ankles, her milk scent, her wonder. You can name every flower, every animal in the darkening forest, and she, simple, only calls out the obvious. Marigold, peacock, bull. So part of the story of Sita that I was sort of interested in is she's in this sort of endless cycle of being exiled. So she's originally exiled with her husband, Ram, who, and they spend a whole lot of time in the jungle. And then she gets kidnapped, and there are all these gossips about rumors that somehow she's not very loyal. So it's a little bit of victim shaming, as we would say. And then she gets returned back to her kingdom, and all the gossips are out, and they don't believe that she's been sort of loyal to her husband Ram. So this is called In Captivity, Sita Contemplates Fidelity. I search the bleak sky for shine. My thoughts a thin prickle pecked by days of jungle rain. The sound of waiting a white blur. What is the color of devotion? Purple night, greened jungles, yellow marigold dust. And still I will not let anyone touch me. My knotted braid imagines itself a slick river in your hands. The pleats of my sari, crisp, patient. I refuse that monkey you sent. My rescue is only yours, through meadow and leaf, wide-armed branches snatching at your back. Once you pulled the sky so close we could feel its humid silk after monsoon, our fingers wet with melancholy. Husband, every night is yours. Fill it with the bow's tight snap, the hollow whistle of arrows on fire. When I close my eyes, I can hear the dusk burning from the sky. So I think I will end with maybe a destruction myth and then maybe one new poem. So this is a destruction myth. A ransom of tangled sorry, broken gold. This girl holds the hush of loam and leaf, the soil's damp-breathed kiss. Once I was untouched, and still you asked for proof. My feet on fire-threaded coals, soft as lotus petals. Pressed into the ground, I dissolve into silt, into cloth, the lucky one, blessed by gravel and dust, a pretty neck strung with pebbles. My virtue becomes a heavy hem pulled down, dirty blooms cloaked into the slender vase of my throat. Bury me with my hurt, skinned and spare, with my voice sooty with black strands, flexed bone. So I'll just end on maybe one or two new poems. So two? Gosh. Okay. So my new book project, I seem to always gravitate towards these projects, is sort of a reimagining of the Odyssey from Penelope's point of view. I think when I was first thinking about it, a lot of things were kind of in the air. I started writing this probably in around 2018, and I think the latest edition of the Odyssey had just come out by Emily Wilson in 2017. There was this whole weird election thing going on in America. So I just sort of had these characters in my head, where there was Penelope, who was kind of the wife left behind, and then there were these house of suitors that kind of never left. And in my mind, they were kind of these like uber macho bros. So this one is called The Suitors Demand an Audience. Tell them to keep their eyes, their brawn, the tentacles of their need sticking to my skin, their bluff and bluster. Poisoned tongues saying thirst as spell, hips as prophecy. I'm loomed together, stars pinned to my hair, waiting for my ship to come in. No water, but a dress made of salt. The only blue, my pulse when I couldn't get out of bed. My heart's rough gem calcified, fossil of some long ago feeling, shatter ready and stubborn. Everywhere I splinter, everywhere they hold dominion. Their hunger makes me seasick. They would drag me from my dreams, give me mouth to mouth. They would mark me with their teeth as proof, as triumph. Say it's because of the animal in me, when it was always, always the animal in them. So I'm going to end with a poem. Another kind of aspect of this new project is there are these oracles who kind of are very judgy and kind of give the wrong advice all the time, but are very firm in their beliefs because they're the oracles. So this one is called The Oracles Don't Want Me to Speak. The oracles don't want me to speak ill of the dead, of the men hanging off the balconies, catcalling, of the suitors with their wet songs and wolfhound smell hanging in the air, of the flattened city in my mind, the cliché of wives and their quaint offerings, the rubble-filled fields where the soldiers' horses froth and foam. how I was left behind, a bride crying in cold cotton, how he must have told the others I'm raw wool to their muslin, coarse by comparison, that I have a talent for staying, how I had 19 recurring dreams, one for each year, the tropes always predictable, water, ships, teeth, that all the birds are omens, but no one knows which ones are lucky. Thank you.
Thank you, Vandana. Next up, we have Kazim Ali, who was born in the United Kingdom and has lived transnationally in the United States, Canada, India, France, and the Middle East. His books encompass multiple genres, including poetry, essay, fiction, and cross-genre work. He's currently a professor at the University of California, San Diego. We're very lucky to have him up here to celebrate his new book. Please, everyone, welcome Kazim.
Hey, thank you so much for coming, everybody. And thank you, Beyond Baroque, for hosting us. It's great, and it's so great to be here with Blas and Vandana. And Erica. Erica and I are going to be reading a bunch more, so I'm going to have to just get used to each other. And Blas, like when my book Skyward came out in 2013, we did 12 or 15 readings together in one fall. And he was like, please do not read that poem one more time. You cannot listen to it anymore. So hopefully I will read new poems. So it's kind of weird putting together a new and selected and choosing poems from over the course of 20 years of a writing life. One of my professors at NYU was Marie Ponceau, who was doing a new and selected poems that same year that I was there. And we asked her, how do you put it together? And she said, I'm not going to try to imitate the way she spoke, which is so distinctive, but she said if she'd really paid attention to her work as a poet, she could just go through the folders for each year and just pull one poem out at random and put them in the book, and that the book would hold together because it would be that good. So that is not how I approached mine. I really tried to create a new trajectory through, and I tried to create poems that would kind of talk to each other. And there are a lot of secrets in this book too, like there's a poem on page 47 and then another poem on page 147, and they have the same image in them. And then I also discovered as I was writing, but putting the poems together, I started to realize that I have been writing the same poems all along, that they just sort of manifested in different ways, and that occasionally I would even use the same phrase from an earlier poem, the phrase would pop up again. So I decided to actually lean into that and include those poems so they could talk to each other throughout this book. And then the other thing that I did quite shamelessly is I revised the poems. So they are different than what they appeared in the original book versions. The first poem I want to read to you is a poem called Agnes Martin, and I just love her so much, and I've always loved looking at her paintings. But the notion of doing an ekphrastic poem about describing a painting that is mostly blank, it didn't seem possible to describe the poem itself. So I tried in language to create what the mood was looking at that painting. And my own languages were multiple in the beginning of my life. I spent my early childhood from 0 to 2, part of that in England where I was born, but a lot of it in India, which is a polyglot society where many people will speak not only 3 or 4, but sometimes 5 or 6 different languages. And so when I first came into language, I spoke multiple languages, but I didn't know they were multiple languages. I was just using all the words. So English for me also, of course, as a South Asian person for whom English is as well as being by now an Indian language, it is also a colonial language. Agnes Martin. And so it was fun working with the copy editor on this book because they were like, that's not actually a word, that one word you use. It's not in the dictionary. And I said, I know, it's in my dictionary. Wetten to work here, seen against the sky, sandscape, sandbox, silent, alone mind, unleashed, mouth, a close, open, cave, stone, breathe, stone, whiten away, sharp, sky, edge, dusk, blend, down, dark, self, edge, thrown, aloft, 5 birds, little surface, wind, lettered and fettered, distant sounds, littered, across, thoughts, sound, blanked, pulled taut, spun, thunder, then well spread, encumbered, better window, bitter, sun, wind, whispered, winter, went, indigo, wild, wick, lit, wend, home, sleep, written, swept, sweetly, remind, hear my mend, hear my mind, hear sweet music, slides, fabric, oceanic, oh, shine, year, light, shine, year, come, ear, tie, signs, and sing, why think, river, open, heart, eye, cornflower, cowslip, field, wind, settled across the year, sound, thrown, settled to end, here, whittled, to wend. So this poem is called Dear Rumi. He's one of my, spiritual guides and guide in language. And it tells a famous story of Shamse Tabriz, who was his teacher. And Shamse Tabriz's name, Shams, it means sun. Dear Rumi, you have forgotten the other life in which Shamse Tabriz threw your books into the fountain, and the ink, finally unrecognizable, reached for you with dissipating lust. Once I went up the mountain at daybreak and still met pilgrims coming down who had woken for the journey earlier, and in the tomb of not Shams I prayed and prayed to be not found. Am I the sun inside me? Shams will walk out the back door and never return, and you will go mad and spend years looking for him. One day in the marketplace, estranged and weeping, you will understand the farthest mosque is the one within, and that the sun in the sky is not the one you orbit around, nor the one who went out the back door and never returned. Somewhere in the world now, every minute, a sun is dropping over the horizon into yesterday. At the fountain in the village square, the books are still sinking, bereft of your hands. Even the mountains are bending down to try to save them. Dear Shamse Tabriz, I do not mourn. You spindle me, sun thorn to the sky. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. This poem is called The Escape. So my book, Skyward, that I mentioned to you, has a thread running through it of poems in the voice of Icarus, poor Icarus, who flew too close to the sun, and he was told not to do so by his father, his wise father. He was a brash boy. He did not listen. The Escape. Father whose purpose swims while the universe mends itself. Wind was water, porpoise was prophet. Father, my swim, the sutured, eventual blue splinters. Seed planter, hedonist, heathen when the unwise son fell to pieces, purposeless when the father flew for cover. The cloven will cleave, the water finishes itself, finishes me. Stream, unreeling, you are the end of the world, an endless horizon, and it's a sham, this charnel choice between heaven and home, because finally I'm free of the labyrinth, and overhead I see nothing but sky. Yeah. Little guy, he didn't know what was going to happen. Okay. So, summer of 2012, was it the Olympics that year? I don't know. There was the Olympics, and there was a weird program on NPR that was like one poet from each continent who was supposed to write a poem about an Olympic sport. And I was the poet from North America, very weirdly. But no, it gets a little weirder, which is that Monica de la Torre, who's Mexican, was the poet from South America. So I think they were like, I don't know. Anyways, so we were each supposed to choose a different sport to write. And I actually wrote about the same sport as the poet from Europe wrote about, which was diving, because I was doing all these Icarus poems, but he handed his poem in first. And so the NPR producer was like, we cannot have two poems on the same sport, sport and athlete. We both mentioned Greg Louganis. Because like Boy Falling Out of the Sky, right? Sort of poem seemed to write itself. So I had like 3 days to come up with a new poem, and I was in the community of writers in the mountains outside Lake Tahoe, where you're supposed to write a new poem every day. So I was like, okay, I guess I have to write one. And I had Blas's book with me, and he has this poem called Amor Fati. And so I wrote a poem called The Wrestler. And I just dedicate this to all the boys I've loved before. This poem, when it came out, it was like on NPR and something, and it was like embraced by the combat community, and it was like being put on websites of like MMA academies and such, and I was sort of like, I think you guys missed the subtext here. So anyways, The Wrestler. My flat breath grows flatter. Who am I now, thick in the tricks the body plays? No matter. The fact of this day on fire and these arms twisted in the effort to master another draws me in time breathless to afternoons as a boy, slick with sweat and laughter, horizontal in a spin, one of us in control and the other on his back and bested. Later, I would read in heaven's books how my body was wrong, though limber and strong. In the web of our efforts, I aim to fix a position where the other's strength ebbs and mine kicks in. Strength splintered to pieces, a shard in the other we each struggle to reach. We give in turn, strip down and shift. I reach for one limb with my right hand, grip harder to another with my left. Our bodies flash their thunder and lack. I strain for what I'm owed. I read heaven its riot act. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. And on the double entendre, I might as well read this poem called Dear Shams, which is an answer to the previous poem, Dear Rumi. I wrote it here in LA, actually. I wrote it, so I experienced things by ear and by sound more than anything else. And I was up at the Getty, and there was this little, or there was, I haven't been there in 20 years, but there was this little like stream or something that goes down and it goes over the rocks. And I was listening to the water go over the rocks, and this poem started to write itself in my mind. There's no answer to winter. Sun sets over the water, falling so quickly. You have not been lost. Listening for silence, where and where did you go? 12-stringed music, rejoin me. In the sun year, I swelled long shadows. In the moon year, the valley folded itself up. You are the beloved I could not love. At the fountain, witless and still, a stream pours over rocks, making music. Could the water rush over me? Could you rush over me? The sun drops so quickly into its banishment? Could I forget to breathe, please, and drown? Will the ocean rejoin me? You have not been lost. Can I be reborn as a guitar and you reborn as music to hum inside me? One day you stopped looking at me and I knew the last note was lingering in the box of my body. You did not vanish in the marketplace. I still imagine you in me as breath, broken in third, chorded to sound. I took your name when the sun came up, sun of winter, sun windless and wistful, come down across the water. Undone sun, give me the drunk, go ahead. Last time I searched for you. This time I stretch, hollow and resonant. Last time I raved without senses. This time, my angel, my string singer, pluck me, oh, pluck me and hum. I too would like to close it out with a brand new poem. Not brand new, I mean I wrote it in June, but new as it can be. Some questions he asked. It has as its epigraph from Brenda Hillman in her book Death Tractates, that the soul got to choose. Nothing else got to, but the soul got to choose. I could never make you mythical, not Demeter who mourned that her son might live half his life in hell after tasting the bliss of the juice bursting from the seed in his palm, nor Niobe who wept like a stone after losing her sons to beauty and ambition. But myth does not do. Perhaps I ought to have imagined you as a nameless mother, like perhaps that of Orpheus, who sang such verses to the dead, they opened the very gates of hell for him. But myth does not do in the nights where it's you who are gone from this world, gone, flown from your shape into whatever is next. At the graveside, it was I, the Orphic son, who climbed into the ground to shake your shoulders to remind you it was time to leave this shape of earth to earth, that these forms were your home no longer. The verses sung from above the earth were not of my making or of my tongue, and none from my own mouth came that day or since. So tell me, did the Greeks know something essential, that even were the soul immortal, without the shape that held it close, it would wander the inaccessible lands forever, that it was the beautiful animal of the body left behind that would dissolve and rejoin creation, that borderless I might lose you to God, the single bright spark of you racing to rejoin some divine whole. It had been dusk. I held your hand. We knew that some part of you was gone, and yet your body lived and breathed. And all I had were not words, but gestures of the body. I held your hand, rested on your shoulder, kissed your face. Listen, was that you or not you that I turned on your side in the grave, making a pillow of a chunk of earth so you could rest facing that mosque you loved on the other side of the planet? Does the soul get to choose? Did Orpheus's mother know he relinquished women and spent his days drunk with poetry and song? And who was she really? The muse of poetry or the muse of dance? Or maybe she was just an ordinary woman, a tomboy from Hyderabad who sang and climbed trees and stole her cousin's bike to ride around the neighborhood laughing the whole way. And what angel or Devi or secret prince slipped the jewel of poetry under her son's tongue and cursed him with knowing he might reach past the screen, separating the lived-in world from the dead? He knew what happened when he looked back. He lost love forever. He was torn limb from limb by a world enraged that even dismembered, his body floated down the river, singing those same syllables that moved ghosts to breathe again. I imagine that ragged screen of grief fluttering and somehow hearing a scrap of a voice in the wind, a flutter of wing. Could it all be more than ancient lies? Could it be perhaps now, having left the shape of earth behind you, that you are singing yourself words taught by angel or Devi, flying backward this time from the dead to the living? O son of sons, who could be gone? I am here, I am here. But it is not a myth, and we are not mythical. You are you, both enveloped by this earth and gone from it, gone. And I am I, torn asunder and cast adrift, no words left in my mouth with which to bewitch the dead.
Thank you, Kazim. That was lovely. And thank you, too, for suggesting and helping me really putting this program together. Really appreciate it. I also just want to give a thanks to all of our staff who worked on it, Eric Alberg in the booth, Ivan Salinas, in particular, our programs coordinator, Jimmy Vega, our assistant director, Nick Foreman in the bookstore as well. And thank you all for coming. We have one more poet I am very excited to have with us tonight, Erica Lewis, who was born in Cincinnati, Ohio. Her books include The Precipice of Jupiter with Mark Stephen Finan, Camera Obscura with artist Mark Stephen Finan as well, Murmur in the Inventory, and the first two books of the box set trilogy, Daryl Hall is My Boyfriend, and Mary Wants to Be a Superwoman. Please, everyone, welcome Erica Lewis.
Hi. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for sticking around. And how do I follow you, Kazim? Why did you set me up like this? So I'm going to read from Mahogany, which is the last book in this trilogy I've been writing. The trilogy is about my family, essentially. And this last book I thought was going to be about, taking all of everything I've learned from writing those first two books. And it's not. It turned out to be something very, very different. It's about my caregiving for my mother and her death and my grief. And all the stuff, all the too muchness that goes into that. And I heard a saying the other day that when people in Norway ask you, "How are you?" they respond with "up and not crying." And that's very much how I feel. Very much how I feel about this work. So I am up and not crying. Make this world, to change birds, all this history you have in your life. We are surrounded by the fucking wolves. Sometimes take off our clothes to find the truth. The start of our safe dream, where shawls have been used in prayer, preserved like angel cake. Rituals for centuries. If I had money, I'd have a baby, move to LA or Tennessee. Cherry red Arcadia written in my native tongue. Black Mountain mineral love, the hard work is done. I'll take it from here. Hold my liquor like the saints do. Our love in cold blood, more than monument or tissue. Your mama, she ain't never gonna be the same. Either I survive or cradle the earth. Kick these rocks in the river. In the river, be a vessel. I'm like a woman who once knew splendor. Sometimes I feel like the Pink Panther, all naked and pink, lost in the morass of do the best you can today and nigga, heal thyself. Our end of winter spirits break like old Tibetan snow. I remember you was conflicted, and I found myself alone. Here on my ancient hurt, the disquieting hum of living history. Dear God, please put my head above my heart. We can only be together if the stories are told. Plain face, same instrument, just a couple of Coke bottles full of gasoline. Like God and rain is a waste of time. My mother used to clean houses as a child. Some days I can barely get out of bed. In my mind, she's like Diana Ross, scrubbing the white lady's stairs in Lady Sings the Blues, except prettier and with green eyes. I've just been living off of cough drops and water and anger, just sitting in the Whole Foods parking lot eating pineapple. I am literally the definition of hot mess. Pain changes everything. Somebody come and pick up my limp body off the ground. I am dying a slow Ohio death. We miss you, Starman. It's our first sunrise of the burn. My spirit was free. It is the year of return to open the wounds, where there are no songs but nigga, heal thyself. Summer was trash, cotton vintage white grinding, and freshly washed sheets. Misread grateful as chateau. The ghost dance, duty bound to be real. Time regained. You are lucky all we want are reparations and not revenge. Our summer should never have been over. Dear God, please put my head above my heart. I just want to crawl in bed with a whole pie and a fork and watch PBS, because it is quite rare to recover shackles from a wreck. When I see my mom, I see God, fucking force of nature. It pains me to reflect on my loss of purity, the erasure of black cowboys. Let me be clear. All of your black friends, if you have any, are emotionally drained. 75% of all illnesses are self-induced. I call this shit post-traumatic growth. You leave a little bit of blood in every room, vaguely seeking material proof of God, life after death, etc. Seriously, think of ways to gradually return to the world. Bats, the only mammal capable of true flight. As blessed as I am cursed. your sympathy. It is the year of the year, the book of Job. I am poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. The point is to fall in love, but at this point, I don't care who loves me. I don't know how to save myself from myself. Yesterday was Luther's birthday. Everything I've loved, I've been or longed to be. Every day the vast ocean, every headline a reminder of how bad the world is fucked. I listen to songs that make me cry so that I can cry. The shadow I'm casting is what's left of me. And sometimes it's like, fuck the world and all its inhabitants. All that inhabits it, grab your lasso of truth. Assume the worst case scenario, assume catastrophe, act accordingly. Like the rock you're clinging to is going to smash you to pieces. You're better off fighting the waves. You're beautiful, but you're giving all your all to the wrong people. And that's why it's breaking you. I have found myself screaming my head off in a hotel room. I have pulled my hair out from the root. I have stood in the water waiting for hours, for rebirth and for death. I have wished for it to come, sussed out in traffic patterns. Things like baptism, cooking fried apples, and how to be American. You're the best thing since peanut butter and jelly. Dear God, please bring her back to me. Conditions. How many times will I let myself go? What is grief if not preserving love? A hole where nobody knows how they got there. I am exhausted by strength. I want softness. I want support, not a pat on the back for how well I take a hit or for how many I take. I like what you said about clearing the grief out of your body. If you want things to get better, you have to stop making them worse. I woke up this morning and just wanted to run and run and run. I don't know how else to survive. I wish well-meaning people would stop saying, I'm sorry. Apologies are a courtesy, not a cure. I mean, where do you put the really heavy pain? Museums are places for dead things to be hung. I just want to be amongst my kin in this summer that does not exist. My hair is falling out in handfuls, and I am vaping some very mediocre vape. I come to isolation, which literally means to be islanded. And I thought, that's exactly what I've been. Islanded. Walking on coals to the other side of pain. Because you survived. Because you are alone. Because you belong to other people. I am a diamond. I am a cancer. Erasure, clinging to this one last hunk of ice. Respectfully, I say to thee, The story of the black cowboy began when our ancestors were brought to this country against their will. The first Kentucky Derbies were won by black jockeys. 1 out of 4 cowboys in the West were black. Every day, I suddenly feel I want to die. Kanye West VH1 Storyteller's full show. The dark night of the soul. Positive disintegration. Soul loss or the descent to the underworld. Negredo, as Carl Jung understood it. St. John of the Cross. I am not having a crisis of faith, I am having a crisis of purpose. Oscuro noche. Take off my robes and step into the choir. Faith flickers as illness or realization. You don't know who you really are. The so-called physical, material, industrial plan for living. To go from emergence to emergency. Sometimes I override my wiser self. And here we are. There is no logic or feeling in loss. If you turn away, it will slowly devour you. Hireth, a homesickness for a place that never was. I don't think people think about me the way that I think about them. Misread still as shit. Unity is shit possible. You are a dancer who is always really pissed. You were conditioned, assumed, or habitual. That really isn't in alignment with who you are. Tireless thought can easily burn you out. When I surrender, I am an absolute mess. To take night literally would be a mistake. Happiness and sadness, the rest of the world, the beginning of a way out. A black cowboy could sit on a bull for half a day and still not win any money. Just a couple more. I'm no great pretender. If you can read this, you are alive. You're going to get your ass kicked whether you're afraid or not. We recite ourselves to life. Remember that in your moments of grief or uncertainty. The body in contact with darkness. You must return to what birthed you. When the body rests, it heals. Black people in the hands of Black people. An algorithm. Became willing to see myself. Refused to be knowable. Would not believe the lie of permanence. You left me holding the bowl of honey. I can picture you in my arms right now. Let time happen. Step over the gravestone. Walk the periphery. Watch them put her in the ground. To see the world again, thought I could know the world. You don't know what hurt is. To let myself be alive. Your presence was no longer my burden. My body this last winter, perpetual reconciliation. You want to pull away now. everything is burning down around you. Do not be afraid to disappear. Be naked. Call me a lioness. The path isn't a straight line. Being an only child teaches you to apologize for every time I wasn't there. I swear like a sailor at the drop of a hat. Stay conscious of the apparatus, your hollows, composure, when we are separate and alone. What if what I want from you isn't new? Savagery is genetic. I'm sitting in my mother's house, wine drunk in the middle of her bed, wearing her mink coat, crying. I could kill right now. I can't die any slower. Last one. I feel so brokenhearted. The Lord is helping me in small and important ways. Watches the YSL show. Runs herself through the ringer. There are two kinds of forgetting. An infinity of dead before me. Flowers grow out of my grave. Things change around you. You rest in the inevitability of things. Ignore your desire. Stop suffering. Give away your possessions. Came down from that cloud. America makes us all artists. Sees migrants as modern slaves. Lies about instinct because blood doesn't lie. We are all combustible. What if I stopped and just sat with who and what I am? Walk through the doors that are. Say this is a good day to take some deep breaths and remember love. I think about you often. All I want to do is be together. I've been depending on the overgrown. Something else I want to leave you with. In the deep, dark horror trenches of healing, I choose you again. Some people never let you go. Empathy becomes expensive when you have empathy for everyone but yourself. I want to be loved as a choice, not as a reward. Sometimes the best choice is the one that's the easiest to live with. Maybe you just learn lessons. I can't remember the last time something wasn't going to shit. Long summer days. If I never get well, I am looking at the fucking sun. Sometimes the universe. All my whiskey. This is the way to remember. I miss you. I'll be there after a while. We live in a perpetually burning building. I felt only softness. My open wounds having no place. I'm on my way home. Everybody say glory. Thank you.
Another round of applause for Erica and for all of our poets. Thank you all so much for coming. We do have some drinks out back if you want to hang out for a while. Of course, there are books for sale in the bookstore. Please do pick up a few copies and stick around for a while. Thanks so much.